Alright, so further into this tutorial series, we're going to talk about brushes. So you'll notice that when you mouse down or stylus down, I really recommend stylus down, on your mesh, again, this one is just found in Dynamesh projects under your lightbox, and then you can hide this panel. But as you do mouse down or stylus down on your object, it's going to start to build on that surface. And you'll notice it's building symmetrically. I really recommend when we're starting out doing a symmetrical character design, it's going to take a lot less time to finish. But if you're interested in turning off symmetry, the hotkey is X. Boom. And you'll see it's now no longer doing symmetry. Again, that's X to toggle it on and off. But yeah, I really recommend working with symmetry on. You can also do symmetry along different axes, and even radial symmetry. So if you're doing like a birthday cake or something, it'd be really nice for that. And you can just toggle that there. But yeah, so that's symmetry. But you'll notice that this brush is adding onto the surface, right? And if we go from this side, you can see that it's really building up on there. However, every single brush has an alternative function, right? So if I hold Alt, it's most likely Command on Mac if you're on a Mac. But Alt, notice how I'm now digging in on that surface, right? Rather than building up. And then let's just push all of this in there. And I'm just using the standard brush. So look at that. Now we have that sort of cave, that concave sort of shape right there. So that's Alt. So note that that's what Alt is doing. It's basically switching it to Z sub mode right there. Very similar to that. And then in addition to that, let's talk about our surface. So if I size my brush down, you can hold space to bring up this menu. I bound draw size to a different button though, so one that's more nice for me. But let's sculpt on this surface and let's dig in a little bit to make some sort of, I don't know, grill almost shape here. And say I don't like how rippled this is, right? So in addition to Alt to sort of dig in on the surface, or build if the brush by default digs in, we can hold Shift. And notice how my brush switches from my standard brush over to smooth. So now if I go across the surface, smoothing out all of that surface right there. It's really making all of those points kind of get a little bit dug into the surface. Like if I start to smooth this, notice how it's kind of pushing that down. Be careful about that. You're gonna lose some detail when you do that, and also your silhouette. Now, what I do is I use alternate smoothing. So notice how it's still doing that same thing, but it's not digging in as harshly, right? It's not digging in as harshly. That's called alternate smoothing, and the way that I'm doing that is I'm starting to smooth, so Shift and then stylus down where I want to smooth. Then I let go of Shift, boom, and that's just gonna do alt smoothing, that's what they call it. And 90% of my smoothing is alt smoothing, 90% of it, right? So keep that in mind, y'all. Now let's talk a little bit about our brush palette. So there's a bunch of brushes in here, bunch of brushes. So if I click on this, boom, it's going to open up. You're going to see so many brushes in here. Again, we're only going to use like 7, maybe 8 or 9, you know. But yeah, not many. Standard, we're just going to go through. Standard is going to be nice and smooth, right? You're going to get nice smooth strokes and build up with that. Very smooth, and you can hold Shift and then do some smoothing on top of that to get even smoother features, right? So standard, very smooth, very nice. However, for building form, I prefer the clay brushes. So pop open clay, It's gonna build on a little bit slowly there, but a lot of artists prefer this for sort of building features. I prefer clay buildup. So if I click on clay buildup, yours is gonna come in like this, and you're gonna see it's gonna be chunky. But what I like to do is just take that alpha off, boom, and then I get nice buildup there. See how easy it is to create form with that? So I really like clay buildup with no alpha for that. And then I can just smooth my stuff out with, again, I'm using alternate smoothing for this. Regular smoothing is going to push in on that surface. I liked where my surface was building out, so I won't do that. And then clay tubes, boom. See how it kind of builds up on that surface in a circle shape or in a square shape, and then it kind of limits it though. That's why I like that clay buildup. It kind of frees that up. But yeah, and you can just smooth this out, you know. So that's clay. Find out which one you like most for building form. Again, my recommendation: give clay buildup with no alpha. Like turn the alpha off in there. Give that a whirl. It's really nice for creating form. And that's kind of the one that I use most. And then, yeah, we've already gone over smoothing. Remember, you're always going to want to refine your model as you're making these strokes. You don't want to get too out of hand. But yeah. Now, very useful brush we're going to go over, the move brushes. So if you go into your palette, move over here. I prefer move topological. There's a small difference between move and move topological that we'll go into more when we're inserting more meshes into the scene. But move topological, and then I like to use a real big size of brush for this. Right? So I like to be moving a lot of that mass at once. And so if this is going to be a face, I'm kind of trying to get all that shape and definition in there. Trying to get the shape of that skull. But yeah. So move brush. A lot of my work is done with the move brush, and you'll see during the time lapse of my base mesh creation that it's very much true. Very useful tool. It's like soft select in Maya. It's just gonna, wherever you put that mouse down or that stylus down and then move, it's gonna create that shape in and sort of fall off. But yeah, really useful for creating forms. That's just like the eye sockets, you know, and then kind of go in, pull out a nose. There you go. So that's just the power of that move brush. Now let's go talk about another brush, Damn Standard. So if we go in here, we're looking for Damn Standard. Let's see. This is all organized by alphabetical order, so you can always go in that way and figure out what you're looking for. But Damn Standard, that's what we're browsing around for. And Damn Standard is incredible at making creases, right? So if I dig into there, look at that. It just creased up that area. If I shrink down my mouse and then dig in there, look at that. It's making that really fine crease. Really great for like nose crease right here on the side. Boom. You just dig in like that and then smooth it out. Really great for lips. Boom. By default, it bores into the surface, right? So if you wanted to do the opposite and build like a ridge, then you're going to hold Alt to do that. Smooth that shape out, and then move topological to sort of change that size in there as well. Boom. Perfect. Fantastic, y'all. So that's Damn Standard, short for Damien Standard. Next, Trim Dynamics. So say I wanted to make some of these surfaces a little bit more hard-edged. So we're looking for Trim Dynamic. Boom. Trim Dynamic right here. Let's go up here. And see that? See how it's kind of flattening out that surface? It's almost like one of those kind of planes of the head breakdown sculptures right there. You see that? You can do it on the cheek. Really get that strong cheek definition in there. The jaw, to get that rigid jaw in place. All sorts of stuff. Now, if you wanted to sharpen that up, you're going to look for something called H-polish. So H-polish goes in and it really sharpens that. It doesn't dig in as much on the surface as trim dynamics. So this is good for refining that edge after you've done some trimming with trim dynamic. But yeah, you're going to get real hard edges that way. Real hard edges. See that? See how sharp that is? So yeah, be careful with that one. And then what we're looking for next is a brush called Inflate. So if I go move topological, and let's do something that we're going to run into a lot of. So let's shrink this down. Let's kind of crumple this shape up, right? So I'm like moving the top and bottom like into each other, and you'll find that this shape happens a lot if we're not careful. And then if you try to sculpt on it, it's going to start building up on both sides. Look at that. Now that mesh is compressed together. It's really hard to undo. Now you can hold shift and start smoothing some of this, and then doing alternate smoothing to really build back that form. However, you can also use Inflate. I have bound it to a different button, but we're looking for it in here. Let's see. There we go. Inflate. Right. So if we click on that, and then stroke on that surface, see how it's kind of ballooning out from that center part. And then we can just smooth and kind of bring that back into life, right? So that's what Inflate is good for. Really nice tool for that sort of situation. And then finally, I'm going to talk about, now if this were an ear, we're kind of in the wrong spot, but that's fine. We're going to talk about insert mesh. So insert mesh is going to, if we go over to IMM primitives, let's do insert sphere, because spheres are nice to work with this. If we wanted to get a neck going here, just drag along there, and notice how it's only making one. You could also make multiple if you're off the line of symmetry, but we want that. We want just one in the scene. So if we do that, and then start to use our move topological tool, we can go in and start making a neck for this character. And these forms aren't that refined, but that's fine. That's fine. We're only talking about the brushes right now. So, there we go. Now we have a neck. Note that this geometry is not combined with the original head, and we're going to talk about something to fix that in the future. But let's talk about masking and trimming and hiding. So that's really associated with our brushes as well, so I'm combining it in this section. But notice how when I did that insert mesh, the rest of my mesh became gray. So now if I try to do clay buildup on this, look at this. Clay buildup's not working on that head. And that's because we have a mask on this. So if you hold Control and then left click drag off the mesh here, boom. It is no longer masked. So now if I do clay buildup, see how it's going between those. So why that's important is, one, to access sculpting on your model again, but you can also control certain shapes. Like say you like this flat part of the plane, if you hold Control, you're now using a masking brush. So now if I, with this area grayed out, that means I can't mess with it at all. So if I start sculpting over here, boom, it's not touching that masked off portion. So it's a very useful tool. If there's a part of your model that you really want to keep, then you can mess with only that. Let's undo that sculpting. If you wanted like these to be horns, you could use your mask and then Control and then click off the mesh, and then that inverts the mask. And let's sort of add that mask by holding Control again. And let's get some horn shape in there. Oops, I went too much in there. I reduced too much of that mask. In order to chew away at that mask, I can hold Control and Alt. And boom, there you go. So now we have a nice little hole right there. If I use my Move tool now, boom, and then pull on that mask, see how every other part of this mesh is masked off, allowing us to only manipulate this geo up here, so we can make some horns that way, right? Nice, useful tool right there. And then, as always, to undo that mask, I'm going to first exit and go into another brush. Let's do Move Topological. To undo this mask, it's going to be Control and then drag off the surface. Boom. Get that fresh geo out there. And let's just smooth this out a little bit. We can just refine these shapes however we want. You'll notice that our geometry is really stretched out here. We're going to use something called Dynamesh to fix that in the next video. But yeah, so that's our masking right there. Now let's talk about hiding and clipping. So if you hold Control and Shift, you're going to be met with Select Rectangle. See how you're no longer the mask pen brush? And also note that you have a bunch of different options in here for masking. So you could use the rectangular selection to mask whatever. But the same goes true for this. So we can select with a bunch of different options. We can also use Trim, which we're going to go into in a little bit. But with the Select, you can drag Select over things, and then it hides every other bit of that mesh. So now if you... It's similar to the masking in that you can't affect the stuff that's hidden. So if I hold Control and then left click off the surface, it's going to unhide everything. But note that it's made a hard division versus like what I was hiding and what I was able to sculpt on. So let's undo that. Boom. But hiding is great for if you want to split off a part of this mesh into another subtool. We're going to talk about subtools later, so that's what that section is going to fall into. But you can also delete stuff. So say I hide everything except for those ears. Then let's say I want the opposite of that, right? So if I drag Select off the surface now, it's going to swap that. Then I can delete hidden. Boom. That's in your geometry, modify topology menu. And then, so now if I try to bring that back, you'll notice that I can't. We just straight up deleted that geometry. And we can now close holes. That's in that same geometry menu. Boom, close holes. And now that geometry is gone. So it's a nice way of kind of deleting geometry out of the scene. Another way to do that is without hiding stuff, is if you hold Control and Shift, you can find your trim brushes. So let's go to Trim. Let's do Trim Rectangle. So let's try to trim these off. So if I, with Control and Shift held, because that's my my little brushes right there, notice you can trim off those horns. And yeah, just a fast way of doing that. I'll talk about this later, but if you wanted that to mirror over to the other side, you have to do Mirror and Weld. But notice how it's mirroring that. It's mirroring across in this direction, so we need to reverse this mesh. So first deformation, then mirror, and then geometry, and Mirror and Weld. Boom. There you go. There you go. So then you have your mesh perfect right there. So that's all for brushes right now. Masking and hiding. That's all part of one deal right there. It's going to be it's going to take a lot of experimentation on your side to sort of understand these brushes, but it'll become more apparent as we work and as you follow along using the brushes that I do to create forms. And I'll break that down in a future video. But yeah, so that's brushes, hiding, and masking. Thanks for watching.